your issue is also resolved before we end this session. That's the whole objective why we are here, as I've noted. Asen, I am going to push through to the next slide so that you can just take our team in terms of the overview of the program. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Ele, and good evening to everyone that has joined us on this open day. I'm really, well, my firstly, by way of introduction, I am Arsen Malola, and I'm the academic head of the EPC program. Really delighted to be with you all, very inspired to be around sort of prospective chartered accountants. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the structure of our program and how really we've designed the program to be sort of personalized for you and your very specific development process, journey rather. I think one thing that we've realized throughout the years is that everyone is unique and sort of the development needs of each and every person needs to be tailored to that person's learning style and approach. And that will sort of elevates your development as you go along. So I'm going to tell you about sort of how we've structured the program to achieve this, but also I'm going to tell you a little bit about, let me just mute, someone get up with muting, some of the innovations that we're very excited about to sort of share with you in this open day. So how have we structured the program? So we have split the program in three phases, essentially. So we have the foundation phase, which is a January start, and this is for the EPC comprehensive program. Then we have what we call the development phase, which starts April, July. And this is sort of for the main for April and catch up for July start dates. And then the assessment phase is applicable for all programs, being the comprehensive, main, and catch-up packages. Why have we structured it in this way? So for our comprehensive sort of package, this program starts early and is designed for candidates who want to join us, who may be candidates that need to brush up on some of the more technical competencies, because the technical competency is really the foundation of it all. At the end of the day, we are all starting to become chartered accountants, and the profession is quite a technical one with accounting, auditing, tax, even strategy, risk management, and governance, all sort of very sort of complex and technical concepts, which you need as a foundation ahead of sort of building all the other competencies. So we designed the foundation phase with this in mind, and we spend about a month working through these more technical competencies. So if you are someone that is either either someone that is repeating APC, or maybe someone that came through the CIMA route that maybe didn't sort of go through some of the more technical elements of sort of becoming a chartered accountant, or you're someone that did IAC or ITC a very long time ago, and you just want to brush up on some of those technical competencies, that January start is ideal for you. And even if you did sort of pass IAC recently and you still want to get that head start, there's still a lot in the foundation phase that will be extremely useful for you. So what we do during the foundation phase, well, we spend a little bit of time working through sort of just outlining how APC is and how the exam works. But then we sort of jump straight into a particular case study, a previous case study that will either be an Endonamo case study or to be a previous SAICA case study. And we extract not only the main background document, but sort of two or three sort of very technical tasks. And in doing that, we sort of walk through sort of the journey with you, sort of introducing you to sort of working through a pre-release document and how you can think about understanding an industry and analyzing a trigger. So we do this, so we walk sort of hand in hand with you. And then we work through those two or three technical tasks, sort of working hand in hand with you. and focusing really on the technical elements. So if it's accounting, it's all the technical, if it's concepts, if it's tax, it's the Income Tax Act, and sort of how that plays out in a task. You're also going to have a bit of an opportunity to attempt these tasks as well. So within the same sort of case studies, what we do is we'll select a few other tasks that we will release for you to also attempt in a sort of I'll call it a failure-free environment, right? So you'll be able to sort of practice sort of what you learned, put it into practice and see where you're at. And I think one of the more important things about the foundation phase as well is identifying areas that you need to focus on for the rest of the program. Because one of the things that we hold quite dearly is continuous improvement and really giving you as many opportunities as possible to identify some of your weaker areas and some of your more weaker areas, and sort of taking that into the sort of the development phase and the following phases to assist with sort of your development journey as the year goes along. So quite an important phase in terms of setting the fundamentals in terms of your journey to writing the APC exam. Now I see a question in the chat speaking towards the foundation phase sort of involves brushing up technicals, how is it different to ABC? And I see there's a response in that. So it's not a sense of just re-lecturing the technical concepts, although there is an opportunity for you to sort of brush up on some of those contexts, but really the focus is on using that case study that I mentioned and seeing how that plays out in an APC environment, being sort of identifying a trigger in a pre-release document that directs you towards a technical concept that you need to brush up on. And then when brushing up on that technical knowledge or doing your pre-research, that is a time where the work that you're going to be doing will be a little bit similar to what you did in a bridging course. But that's really over sort of a couple of days, max a week. And then you sort of come back and then sort of experience what it's like to work through the information on the day. What does that look like, right? How do you identify what you have been asked to do in a particular task? How do you go about sort of reacting to the development of the case study on the day? Some people call it surprises or twists on the day, but it's really how a task develops from pre-release period to the information that you're given on the day. How do you think about that and how do you react to that? And then how do you transform your research over the last couple of days, brushing up the technical knowledge into a response that will result in a competent outcome, or you essentially passing the task? We walk through sort of how the assessment works. So how you work through a marking grid, how you sort of work through a straw man. We work through coverage, how you sort of go about thinking about covering, unpacking issues, and also depth, right? Dealing with issues with sufficient depth such that you demonstrate those competency areas. So there is an element of sort of the technical component, but there's a lot around bringing that into the context of an APC exam. So thank you for that question. Then sort of following on from the foundation phase, so the candidates that are with us in the comprehensive program will sort of follow into the development phase, and the candidates that are in the main program will also join in from the development phase. So the development phase is now where we focused on creating that business leader that Ele spoke about before I jump in. This is where we focused on sort of the core competencies that define a chartered accountant. Now, a chartered accountant is not just a profession, it's a state of being. So whilst the technical competency is quite fundamental to the profession, it is a far more broader concept than just that. So in addition to technical competence, we need to now think about sort of professional values and citizenship, and leadership as an example. So here we need to focus on sort of various skills and acumen, such as thinking about ethics and the role that ethics plays in being a chartered accountant, citizenship, is another example, and also just lifelong learning. So this professional values and leadership is focusing on who you are or who you will be as a chartered accountant. And now that relates to only the sort of this assessment, the APC assessment, ultimately, so CICA's assessment or ICAS's assessment, but more who you are going to be. Because remember, ultimately, what we're trying to do here is train you we're not training you to pass an exam, we're training you to be an empowered business leader. Then we also need to think about some enabling competencies as well, which need to be developed during the development phase. So with these enabling competencies, we're thinking about sort of skills such as critical thinking, which on the face of it, one may think, I mean, I'm thinking all the time, I'm sure you're all, as you're listening to me, thinking and just you're in your mind and you're hearing yourself, but what does it mean to be a critical thinker? Now, this is the core skill of a chartered accountant and really what sets sort of CAs apart just in terms of the profession or professions in general. Business acumen is another core competency that we need to think about and focus about. And this ultimately is just like transforming us all into commercially minded people, understanding how business works, understanding how economies work, understanding how the world of commerce works in general, and how that plays out in different types of businesses, and understanding sort of different types of businesses and how that impacts us as chartered accountants and how we think about things. So business acumen is another example of an enabling competency that we need to be focusing on. As you can imagine, in this world, where things, and also kind of linked to a wonderful development that we want to touch on as well as sort of one of the differentiators for Endonamo is digital acumen. In this day and age, it's impossible to live in a bubble. We are all on our devices. Not too long ago, we didn't have virtual sessions like this. And sort of the pandemic happens, long story short, here we are having these wonderful virtual sessions. So what role does digital acumen play in terms of future-proofing ourselves as chartered accountants, and also just generally in terms of guiding your success throughout this program in terms of how do you go about sort of doing the work while sort of focusing on that digital acumen, and also how do you think about businesses with that lens of digital acumen, digital risks, and also just as a chartered accountant in future, how are you going to empower yourself to be a chartered accountant of the future that leverages off all of these digital or technologies that are available to us. Business writing is another competency that is core. There's one thing to know all the concepts and technical matters and have everything in your mind, but if you can't deliver your message, then there is really no use. Not only in sort of the exams that you're going to be writing, whether it's our exams or CICA's exam, but also as a chartered accountant. Being able to deliver a message clearly and responsibly is a core skill for a chartered accountant, and something that we have identified as an area where in our program we pay particular focus to, because it may seem as if it's something simple, i.e. we're all on our phones typing all the time, we're all writing messages in the chat. But what does it mean to write as a chartered accountant? What does it mean to consider your audience when you send a message or an email? How do you tailor your responses depending on the ask, what you've been asked to do, to whom you've been asked to respond to? And how does that play out not only in the assessments, but also as you sort of continue on as a chartered accountant into future? Communication is key, and it's something that's consistently evolving, even sort of way after you sort of become a chartered accountant. I can even speak for myself. All of the skills that I've spoken about, all the competencies I've spoken about, sort of in the last couple of minutes, I am even still developing these competencies. And that is ultimately that lifelong learning element that we spoke about that needs to be embedded in your core. And this exam, how it's structured, this program, how it's structured, is designed to essentially also test how you will go about being a lifelong learner. Are you able to identify a problem in a pre-release document? From that problem, are you able to find what resources are going to help you to solve that problem? That's the 5 days of research that you're given. Then, when presented with or asked to solve that problem, are you able to use that learning that you or upskilling that you've done over the last couple of days to deliver your message, right? IOD and responding. So all of the skills that I've sort of mentioned now are core to you being a chartered accountant. And those are the elements that we focus on quite a bit in the development phase. How do we do all of this? So we've got business acumen, business writing, and critical thinking workshops, where within the development phase, we bring in experts in those 3 areas that will work with you in terms of just whether it's critical thinking. We've got Professor Elton, who comes through. He did a wonderful thesis and has written some papers and has done a lot of research in this area of critical thinking, which essentially is just asking questions. I know it sounds simple in principle, but you'll actually be extremely amazed when you join us and have that session, where just a humble question really just unlocks critical thinking. A phenomenal session. I learned a lot myself when I was in that session for the first time a couple of years back. We've got some business acumen workshops and sessions that we hold where wonderfully talented and successful people come through and talk. For example, one of the things that happens is they come through and they talk about their businesses and answer simple questions like, how does my business make money? Or how does this business that I work in make money? Who are the customers for our business? Right? Simple concepts like Airbnb, for example. Who is the customer? Is the customer the person booking the hotel or the room? Or is the customer the person that is providing the hotel to on the Airbnb platform? Right? Who does Airbnb focus on? And how do they make their money? Right? It's just wonderful discussions. I mean, you may not get Airbnb as a company in your case study, but ultimately it just gets those neurons in your brains connecting, just to start helping you think like a commercially minded person, like a business leader. And it's all of those skills that we doing it purposefully, but you don't realize it in the background when you pick up a case study and you're now trying to understand the value chain of a business. Which is something that I believe Rendani will do again this year. When you start talking about sort of how does this business make money and what is the value chain and the value creation sort of process, you'll find that you're able to think about, engage in these conversations a lot more, just because you understand or you heard from somebody that spoke about how Airbnb sort of makes money and who their customers and how they think about all their business challenges. It just becomes organic and wonderful. So I really love those business acumen sessions. Then business writing, similar concept, a workshop. I can speak for myself too. Even as a qualified chartered accountant, a couple of years back, I remember being in one of those workshops. We work very closely with the service provider that provides this workshop. I learned so much. I thought I wrote a pretty decent email. I thought I was pretty good, but just the amount of just skills and knowledge that was just unlocked and things I didn't realize I was doing when I was typing out a message. And when I put these things into practice in my life, and I'll remind you again, it was way after I qualified as a CA, I saw that immediate impact in sort of the engagement I was getting sort of from emails, etc., and the ability to deliver my message, which ultimately is what APC is trying to simulate, what EPC is trying to train you on. So wonderful sessions, those business writing workshops as well, and they're very practical sessions, and you get feedback, you get to ask questions, you get to engage, which is just phenomenal workshops. Highly recommend you join and sort of experience those wonderful workshops in your journey. So that is the development phase. wherein our people joining us in the comprehensive program will jump into this phase. Our main program sort of candidates will start at this phase, and our catch-up sort of people joining us in the catch-up program will join in July. As part of this phase as well, it's very important to mention the fact that you will be also still going through sort of or working through the demonstration of technical competence. So in other words, you're going to be doing similar things to what I sort of described in the foundation phase, wherein we will grab another previous PsyCAV or ICAS or Endonamo case study. We'll break it up into pieces, sort of two halves essentially. The one half will be 3 or 4 tasks that, again, we will sort of work through these skills specifically as we go along. So for example, there will be a task that potentially requires a lot of critical thinking. So for that particular task, we will, so for the case study as a whole, we will work through the background document where Rindani, for example, will come through and work through how you think about unpacking a background document, understanding an industry, understanding a business, understanding the value chain, understanding the economic environment in which an entity operates, understanding the competitors, the peers, identifying risks as you work through opportunities, etc. So you get various frameworks and methods to help you unpack a background document in a pre-release document that you're going to get in the exam. Then using one of those 3 or 4 tasks that I mentioned, specifically targeting the new core competencies that you're going to be learning, right? One technical, one that focuses on critical thinking, but critical thinking is pervasive, but there will be one that maybe elevates that sort of critical thinking element a little bit more. One that has a lot of business acumen in it. So for example, a strategy, risk management and governance question, task. And using those tasks, we'll work through identifying the trigger for that particular task, thinking about the work that you need to do for that particular task, coming through on the day and sort of working through what you've been asked to do and how to respond. You taking the time to sort of attempt that particular task. We'll speak about some of the innovations around the feedback you'll be getting shortly. And then sort of coming together in a feedback session to talk about the task and sort of speak about the whole journey, what you were meant to do, how you were meant to think about things. We have a discussion, ask questions, etc. How the marking group is. So very similar to what you're doing in the foundation stage, but now we're picking tasks that focus on these new competencies that you will be learning. So ethics, critical thinking, business writing as a couple of examples. Then there'll be about 4 tasks left in this previous case study that we would have picked. And ultimately, that case study will kind of use that as a, you can think of it as like a mini case study that you're going to write or a mini exam that you're going to write. Again, low risk, so you can't really fail. In fact, the things that don't go right, those are it's just information, right? So there's no bad or good, there's no right or wrong, it's all information. And the key is, what are you going to do with that information? And that's where we're here to help and here to guide. So with regards to that information, i.e. this element didn't really go through, or I haven't really sorted out, or I don't really understand, or I'm not on top of what critical thinking is, there's an opportunity there for you to kind of work more on that particular element, to sort of upskill yourself and ahead of the assessment phase. And I think while we're sort of talking to the assessment phase, we'll talk a little bit more about sort of some of those avenues that are available all throughout the program. So when I speak to an assessment phase, I'll just also reiterate that all throughout the program, this level of support is available when it comes to your reflections as you go through this sort of case study. This sort of program. So to rehash before we go into the assessment phase, because I do acknowledge I've been sort of sharing a lot of information. On the foundation or the backdrop of all of this, we are sort of using previous PsyCAV, ICAS, or Endonamo case studies to develop our skills. In the foundation phase, focus is on the technical competency. It is not a re-lecture of technical concepts, but rather it is a phase in the program that focuses on introducing you to the case study format, and then sort of using more technical tasks sort of enables you to identify your development needs early. Then we go into the development phase, wherein we now start working on all the other two core competencies, being professional values and leadership and enabling competencies. We have all the workshops that we mentioned that are available to assist with sort of upskilling yourself with these competencies. And when it comes to sort of seeing those competencies in action and seeing how those play out, not only in the exam, but also in real life, we have another previous SAICA, ICAS, or Endunamo case study that we use as a mechanism to work through these skills. Now, moving on to the assessment phase. So in the assessment phase, this is now where we essentially show us what you've got, essentially show us what you've learned throughout the program. So in the assessment phase, we've got 3 case studies or 3 exams. You can look at them like as we have the baseline, the final, the supplementary. The goal of the assessment phase, the ultimate goal, is EPC certification, which entitles you or gives you the right to attempt SAICA's exam at the end of the year if you don't already have a certificate. These assessments are Endunamo created or drafted case studies that you would have not seen before, or no one would have actually seen before, designed to mirror SAICA's approach to assessing at the end of the year. So a lot of the professional team are involved in sort of the review of SAICA's sort of exams on an annual basis. And our close engagement means that we tailor and design our case studies as closely as possible to sort of the approach that SAICA takes and the rules of the APC exam at the end of the year. The 3 case studies are called baseline, final, and supplementary case study. The first case study, the baseline case study, is, as the name suggests, the one that sets the base. So this one really is the first time you're going to encounter a full case study, a full 8-hour case study sitting, and the outcome of this case study counts towards whether or not you receive an EPC certificate. The final case study is, as the name suggests, the final case study. So it is only after the baseline and the final where you will sort of after you write those 2 case studies, where there's an opportunity for you to have to earn an EPC certificate. So what I mean is, even if you sort of pass the first baseline case study, you'll still be required to write the final case study and pass that case study too, for you to get an EPC certificate. The supplementary case study is an additional opportunity for that provides sort of opportunity for various candidates that, for example, showed progress during the baseline and the final case study. So maybe weren't successful in meeting our requirements for a certificate, but clearly demonstrated some progress and commitment to the program. They get an additional opportunity to write a supplementary exam, or maybe a candidate that may have started strong, but then showed sort of much less commitment towards the second half of the program, and also or maybe didn't do too well in the final exam, is an additional opportunity to earn a certificate. For all for any candidate that maybe has already got a certificate after the final case study, but still wants some extra practice, the supplementary exam is available for them too. Um, I think just speaking to the latter group of candidates, it's always a good idea to get in more practice before the APC exam for SAICA and ICAS, because ultimately there aren't many opportunities to practice these exams. And because the exams are such long form, it's very challenging to simulate a full sitting on your own. You really do need the infrastructure of a provider like ourselves to assist with the whole process. So I highly recommend that even if you sort of pass the final case study, that you still sit the supplementary case study. Now, the assessment phase is not just we give you the exam, you respond, we assess, we give you an outcome, and we just walk away. I think this is a perfect opportunity to just highlight some of the support that you have throughout the program as well. And like I said initially, all the support I'm highlighting in the assessment phase is equally applicable for every single phase, right? There was just no point in me repeating what I'm about to say 3 times. So you're always going to have this support. So of course, this is the assessment phase. So we're not going to be walking you through the pre-release document. We would have done that in the foundation and the development phase. Now it's just you and your groups, up to you. On the Friday, you have the document, you work through it using all the skills that we've spoken about. On the day, you're on your own, again, working through the skills that we've spoken about, sort of demonstrating that those skills on the day. And then, of course, you submit your attempt. However, your journey doesn't stop there. You don't submit your attempt, wash your hands, and walk away. There's various support that is available to you throughout the assessment phase. Firstly, we have very detailed sort of reflection sessions that happen sort of soon after you submit your case study, your attempt. So what you can expect from us is videos or screencasts that reflect on all of the tasks. And the reflections, we really go through how you could have gone about thinking through the pre-release document and the pre-release emails and identifying the triggers. Where were the triggers? Where were the signals? And where were the negative triggers? And all the other concepts we learned throughout the program. And we also work through a trigger analysis document. So what is at a minimum, the type of work that you should have sort of reasonably considered doing from what the trigger was to prepare yourself for the on-the-day assessment. We work through things like how do you contextualize triggers, right? So how could you have contextualized the trigger in terms of saying, yes, this is the word that said you need to go refresh on this technical competency, but does that mean you need to do everything? Do you need to focus your attention on a specific issue? Is there some work that you could do in the pre-release period? All that is provided as part of that sort of reflection screencast video. The idea is you can then watch this video, reflect on how you approach the same, so the 5 days, reflect on how you approach it as a group, start thinking about where sort of things could have been improved, or maybe you were spot on, maybe you did a little bit more, assess, maybe you did too much, you were just reflecting on the case study. Then, depending on the task, you can expect a live session that we call a feedback session, where we have a session like this one with everyone that attempted the task, armed with all of your reflections from the pre-release document. We work through the information on the day. We spend a little bit of time unpacking some of those reflections, seeing where the problem areas are, and then go in the information on the day, and then work through that document and sort of unpack. How do you think about what the task is? What have you been asked to do? How do you think about planning? How do you think about trying to put something on a page that kind of reflects the straw man? How do you think about coverage? How do you think about depth? How do you think about performing a line-by-line review? How do you deal with the next issue that comes at you on the day? We work through all of those concepts. What are the common sort of pitfalls and areas that we're seeing as we sort of done the initial sort of a bit of the marking that we've gotten through? What are the common themes that we're seeing that we want to share, right? And how can we sort of take it the next step further and sort of from everything that you've sort of picked up that you need development on, how do you go about what's the word I'm looking for? Working on all of those issues. Now, in terms of working on all of those issues, there is support available. And I think the next slide has a little bit more of this, but it's all good. Still on this slide, it's fine. We've got sort of private consultations that's available if you want to chat one-on-one as opposed to in a lecture as a group. You can book in consultations with the senior sort of professional team, with our senior markers. So you can actually speak to the person that was involved in assessing the script. We have sort of caretakers that can assist from a wellness perspective. And we've got Viva Engage where you can pop in your questions and someone from the professional team or the market team is available to answer your question. So you're never alone. There's always going to be support for you as you reflect along the process. Then you are going to be given the solution and the marking grid to the exam, so you're going to know exactly how you assessed. And while you're waiting for your time to sort of do a self-assessment, that always also helps with your own reflections in terms of what may have gone right or wrong. And then when you get your outcome, again, I'm very excited to sort of share a wonderful innovation. And I think that's a wonderful segue into the next slide. But I think I'm just going to pause here because I know I've got the team and the chats that are helping me with the comments in the chat. So unless there's anything that Ella or Danny wants to flag for me to answer, I'm going to presume that everything in the comment has been answered. But I just want to pause here just in case there are any other questions that anyone has in terms of the structure of our program. Okay, great. I know there was a lot of chatting in the chat, and I see some thumbs up. I see a hand. Sarita, you can jump in.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for the overview. Sorry, I did join a bit late because I was in a meeting, so forgive me if I'm asking a question that you've already covered. I would be looking to come in July if I am comfortable, because I'm coming in from the ABC. I've done CIMA. So coming in from the ABC, right, into this development phase, would you say that the ABC has adequately covered what you would be doing in the foundation phase? I'm assuming of the comprehensive program.
Right. It's a great question. So ABC, what do you have? You're coming into the development phase in July, having worked through some of the more topical, complex, usually assessed or sort of technical areas across the disciplines. So whether that's auditing, tax, accounting, etc. So what you have coming from ABC is that technical foundation. So for example, if I asked you sort of how does depreciation for PPE work, you would be able to answer that question, right? You've got the technical knowledge. What you still need coming out of the bridging course is the practical application of sort of that technical, or before we get there. You have the technical knowledge. What you still need is the two other competencies that I spoke about. So you still need to develop your professional values and leadership, and you still need to develop your leadership competencies. Joining the development phase in July, that's what you will get through the workshops and all the other initiatives that we spoke about. So then what do you have now? Now you've got the technical competencies, you've got professional values and leadership, and you've got the enabling competencies. What you're still missing is how does this play out in an APC exam setting? How do you go about demonstrating those competencies so that you can pass the assessment in the assessment phase, so you can pass the APC exam, so that you can be an empowered business leader? That's what you will also get in the development phase. What you will miss from the foundation phase is just a couple of tasks that are sort of technical focused, but in the development phase, you will still ultimately what's what I'm looking for? You will still sort of work through tasks that will help you sort of demonstrate whether it's technical competencies, professional values and citizenship, and enabling competencies in that APC setting. I'm hoping that answers the question. Sirendani has a hand, so I'm guessing he wants to add or correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, if I might just add before Rendani comes in. So I had already registered for the course, and I have access to start watching the videos, right? The ABC. I want to ask, at the end of the ABC, if I feel that I need a bit more time and then only join in the following year and then decide to go for the comprehensive APC, will they allow me to switch?
I don't believe. Sorry, you can go, Rendani.
Yeah, let me jump in there. So thank you for that question. So to just add on what Hassan has shared with regards to how then one gets integrated. So one of the things that we're going to be doing next year, and this is just based on the feedback that we've got from our current candidates, is just it's really a change around the assessment structure. So current program has got the assessment structure that reflects a very technical component, IAC style, where there is a mark-based kind of an approach. So for the very first time come 2026, one of the things that we are going to be doing, we are moving to a rubric, marking grid kind of style in terms of marking, so that we make your transition into the development phase much more seamless. So the content of the ABC, think about it as an extended foundation, but it's got an additional element where now, before we say that there's a task on, say, leasing, there's a task on revenue, we have, in most instances, content where we then say, let's just unpack the standard. How do you think about it? How do you go about highlighting the more critical elements? So the key difference there is that if you know you still need that technical guidance, that technical rigor, the ABC becomes much more instrumental to your journey versus the foundation phase, which means that by the time you join this development phase in July, you are much more prepared. In other words, we will want you to feel and think like you are a typical candidate that just came from sitting for the IAC. So you will not at all find that it will be a big jump, because the technical will still be fresh. And as Asen then said, you will now be embracing more of the professional enabling competencies that is then expected at an APC level. So that's just number one. Then number two, yes, there is a flexibility built into this new structure that we've got. And we did understand that there will be some that are saying that I'm ready, and some that are saying that they are not ready. So if you say to us that you are not ready for one reason or the other, the flexibility that we've built in is that you can therefore pause your APC enrollment, and your entire tuition will then be moved to the next year. But because there is then the difference between the catch-up pricing as well as the APC comprehensive